Disclaimer. To the Pharisees and Karens out there.
How dare you!
All guests on this show do not reflect the opinions of the host. The purpose of this show is to have interesting conversations, stretch our minds, and grow.
Not what we want!
If you are looking for an echo chamber, viewer and listener discretion
is advised.
You talk about extreme.
What is happening and what is up? Hold out your glass, because we're about to fill it up.
Torches high.
Look at it from a different perspective.
Hey guys, what is happening and what is up? Hold out that glass, because you know what time it is. We are about to fill it up. Welcome to the Prometheus Lens Podcast, the place where the conversations are always enlightening. I'm your host, Doc Brown, and here we like to use the allegory of the Prometheus Lens to take a second look at everything. Hey, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the hero's journey. Be sure and hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. Down below, we'll have our banner to our social media at their various outlets. Be sure and check those out. That would be much, much appreciated. Well, guys, you know how I am. I'm that doom-scrolling nerd, always looking for cool and interesting things to investigate. And once again, some YouTube short, I believe it was, or a reel that I'd found on Instagram, I had stumbled across this thing called the Balochistan Sphinx. And this is out in Pakistan. And just from first glance, an uneducated person just looking at this thing would be like, this looks exactly like the Sphinx in Egypt. It's just really decayed and weathered. And it's sitting out in the middle of Pakistan. And I was like, man, how come I've not heard of this? So I got to looking a little bit, and I found this man's name attached to this. And he's about the only one that's actually looked into this subject and took a deep dive on this subject. So I went and found him on Facebook and went to the website and got his email and reached out on both of those places. And this guy, he reached out within 24 hours, so I'm extremely grateful. And he was willing to come on and talk to us and let us know about this thing that he's found and done a lot of research on. So I'm really thankful for this man's time. Welcome to the show for the first time of many, hopefully, Bibhu Mishra. Thank you, sir, for coming on and talking to us and the listeners today.
Thanks, Justin, for having me here. And it's an interesting topic, the Balochistan Sphinx. I wrote an article about it nearly 6 or 7 years ago, and it was published on Graham Hancock's website. And since then, it has garnered a bit of interest. I was hoping that at least some archaeologists would look at it, go there. There might be a survey of some kind there, but nothing like that has happened till now, which is really unfortunate, because when you look at those pictures, it really strikes you as a man-made structure and not a natural geological phenomenon.
Yeah, it does. Just that first glance. I mean, like I said, that was the first thing that I thought of. I was like, man, that looks exactly like it. And there's a spot somewhere in America, in the, what's it called? Daggone it. Out in Arizona. And, but they have an outcropping of a rock in the, what is that called? Shoot. Grand Canyon. Yes.
Yeah.
But there's this outcropping in the Grand Canyon that kind of looks like a sphinx, and people think that that's what that is. But this one is much more distinct. It looks a lot more like one.
Yeah, this one is like, you look at it first glance, and everybody who's seen that structure, when I was doing my research on it, I came across a lot of first-hand visitors to that place. I looked at their blogs, I looked at their comments. And by the way, there's a YouTube channel called Ancient Architects. And they made a video on this particular Sphinx based on my article on Graham Hancock's website. And that video went on to get around 500,000 views, around 500K views. And a lot of those respondents were commenting in that section. I was going through the comments because I haven't been there personally, which is a shame, because when you're writing about an archaeological structure, you need to go there firsthand and look at it. But I can't go there because as an Indian, I wouldn't be getting a visa to Pakistan. We have this thing going on between India and Pakistan where I can't go there on a tourist visa. Neither can they come here on a tourist visa. So it's basically out of bounds for me. And I was hoping that At least the people in Pakistan would go and see it, because only a few people there have seen that structure. And a lot of those comments which came out on that YouTube video, the people in Pakistan were saying that, my God, I have never heard of such a structure in my own country. And the people who've gone there and seen that structure, all of them were saying that we looked at it, it looked man-made. I mean, there's no way that you can explain it as a natural geological structure. And it's not just the Sphinx. Right below the Sphinx, you have this it sits on a platform. And that platform itself, an elevated platform, like a wall, like the outer wall of a palace or an outer wall of a fort. And that platform itself has been carved out. So you can see the distinct pillars, and you can see a set of steps which lead up to those to that whole site. And then there's a lot of sediment covering on the whole structure. And the sediment is not a surprise, because this is located very close to the sea. It's around less than 2 kilometers from the sea. And that area, that part of Pakistan, is very prone to tsunamis. And there have been, even in recent times, there have been a lot of underwater volcanic eruptions. They call them sometimes you have mud volcanoes erupting under the sea, and you might have a temporary island in the ocean, which then dissipates away after a few days or a few weeks. But you have tsunamis. Large tsunamis have happened there even in the historical times. There was a big one in 1950s where the waves were around 10 to 20 feet high. So the sediment covering on the whole structure can be very easily explained by major tsunami events, which carried the ocean water and deposited that sediment on those rocks. So it's really surprising how come no archaeological study, a genuine archaeological study, has been conducted in that particular place. And that was something that I desperately wanted to find out, if some real mainstream archaeological survey has been done there. Because first glance it looks really like a man-made structure, and then I could find nothing. No archaeologist has gone there and done a study. And even if they have, it's not published. And that's the ultimate, finally, that's the conclusion that I came to, that this place is been deliberately hidden. It's been deliberately passed off as a geological structure. Archaeologists are deliberately not going there. And what happened was, there were a couple of people from, there were actually 3 people from Pakistan who contacted me over email and messenger. And they said that they're really interested in going there and looking at the site and getting more videos and photographs to prove that this is actually a man-made structure. And one of them backed out. 2 of them went there. One of them said that the military did not allow him to get close to the structure. And the third guy, went there. He took a lot of photographs and videos, and he said that it's awesome. It's mind blowing. It's a natural structure. And then he cut off all communication with me. He didn't go any further than that, which tells me that there might be some kind of an internal pressure on the people out there not to divulge any kind of information about it to outsiders. Because, Pakistan is kind of ruled by the military. I mean, they do have a democratic government from time to time, but most of the time it's the military which is in power, and people are really, they don't go against what the military leaders are saying. So that's a big problem. I mean, I can't go there. The people out there are not cooperating, and I didn't, nobody from any other part of the world has gone there till now to do an exploration.
Yeah, and that's one of those things too that I've noticed, especially it's different in each country, but like Pakistan, I view them kind of like China. They like to isolate themselves. They don't like to let in outsiders. And if there was some kind of amazing discovery that would bring a bunch of outsiders in and tourists, they don't want that.
Exactly, which is a big surprise. If you look at the Sphinx in Egypt, it's such a big money spinner. And if they can prove that this is also a man-made structure, and if they can restore the whole place, because it's not just the Sphinx and the platform. Because I looked at one particular video which was taken by a guy who was driving along this road, And by the way, this place is in the middle of nowhere. There was no road connectivity to the Sphinx for a long time, and this road connectivity came up only in the last 20 years, sometime around 2004, I think. This road was they built this road through this whole desert to connect two important cities, and that's when the tourists started actually going there more regularly. And before 2004, there weren't even any pictures of that structure. And so it's basically in the middle of nowhere. And yeah, those are the images. And I was looking at one of the videos that a guy made this video while he was driving from Karachi to Gwadar, because this place lies on the highway connecting Karachi and Gwadar. And he made this video, and he could see a lot of rectangular structures, very much looking like houses and palaces. And you have a structure with pillars. So when you look at that video and all of those images, it looks like grand, some kind of a palace or some kind of a religious structure or religious place like a temple.
And that's one thing too, is like I brought up the image for the viewers on YouTube. Even like these look like pillars.
Yeah.
You have this platform and you have these pillars. And for those that's familiar with the site they believe to be Sodom and Gomorrah from the Bible, it's just like this. It looks like it almost looks petrified. And yeah, I mean, look at that. I mean, you have clearly a body, a head.
You have that headdress.
You have almost a nose. Yeah, the little headdress, Egyptian headdress right there.
The pharaonic
paws
headdress
coming out front. I mean, it's unmistakable. I was trying to pull up some of these other pictures and that you were referencing to show them. Here's those steps, or it's a little bit in the picture. Yeah, I mean, that's just, I don't see why anybody's, like we talked about earlier, that someone's interest is not sparked and wants to investigate that. It looks just like it. Here's another one.
That's the Sphinx of Egypt. Yeah, here's a picture from that's the Egyptian one. Yeah. Here's an image from the highway.
Right here.
Yeah. And there you can even see a series
the steps you were talking about.
Yeah, the steps.
That does. It just looks like a complex. You got an archway, looks like a door, columns, and this thing just sitting right on top.
Yeah, and there's another structure in front of the Sphinx, which looks like a temple.
Yes.
It's like a flat, it's like a pyramid with the top cut off. You have those kind of temples in India where it's kind of like a pyramid. It's like a flat top pyramid.
You've seen Bigfoot hats, the ones that play it safe, hanging next to the fridge magnets and park gift shop. But the Soul Squatch, their gear is built different. This is Squatch approved gear for people who believe the legend deserves more. It's rugged, meaningful, and created by two outdoor obsessed believers who wanted to honor the myth without watering it down. Their Pathfinder hat, it's not just headwear. It's a quiet signal, something that says, yeah, I believe. Check out thesoulsquatch.com. Step into the story and join the ones who never stop believing.
You have them in Mesoamerica as well. The Mayan pyramids, quite a few of them are flat top pyramids.
And I see you say it says Vimana, like maybe a landing spot for some of these ships and stuff you hear about in the Rig Vedas and all that.
Yeah, but the Vimana is the reason I used Vimana is because the spire of a temple is also called a Vimana. So that's what I meant here. That this is this could be a temple spire. Yeah, this is a guy who went there.
That's just for size.
This is a big complex. It seems like there's a palace or kind of a fort, and this sits on top of one of the uh, walls of the fort, like a religious place. Here I'm talking about the different kind of sphinxes. You have the sphinx in Egypt, and in India also, in religious art, we find sphinxes. They are not as common as those you find in Egypt. But in India, we find this, the human faced lion protecting a temple. See, in the Indian diagram, you find that the sphinx is actually standing in front of a temple. And that's what you have in Balochistan as well. It's sitting close to a temple like structure. And there's one in Myanmar. This is Burma. Here also the Sphinx appears to be protecting or guarding the temple. And then, of course, you also have
That's
in
what I was about to
Greece.
say. You see them as like throne guardians almost in almost every instance that you see depictions of these Sphinx-like characters. They're like guardians.
They're the guardians of doorways or the guardians of sacred places. And that's the temple. I tried to find out some of the, elements there which look man-made. So even on the temple-like structure, you can see some pillars. You can see some carvings on the face of the temple, on the front of the temple. Some carvings of I don't know what it could be. Like in Egypt, on the temple facade, you have a lot of carvings of the gods. In India, also on the temple facade, you'll find carving of the gods. Here, you can't really make out what those figures are, but there appears to be some kind of carving on the facade.
Yeah, it almost looks kind of like outcroppings of people, like in Egypt, how they got the gods or whatever depicted standing there.
Yeah, gods
that
or
looks
the
like a head
guardians.
and a body, and right there's one, and I could definitely see it.
And this is a comparison between one of the uh, gateways in India. When you're entering a temple complex, the gateway, there's a gateway which leads to the temple complex, and that's one of the gateways that we have in India. Which, if you look at the structures are very similar. There is flat topped. There's carving on the facade. There's this wall. You have the gateway and then the wall on both sides. And the wall has pillars carved on them, so it looks pretty similar.
Yeah, for sure. And that one, that's what I said earlier. I mean, just look at that, guys. I mean,
Yeah,
and
and
like
you
I was
also have a
saying earlier, I
geometric.
had mentioned it.
You also have a geometric pattern running across the whole platform. There's a geometric pattern which cannot be made by nature, because it's like a crisscross. In nature you don't find a crisscross pattern. You can have a horizontal or a vertical pattern, but not a crisscross kind of a pattern.
Yeah, I agree. And how we were talking earlier too about shutting off for tourists because they want it to be a closed country. Another thing I found too, and if you've had interactions or watched or read Graham Hancock stuff, he talks about it a lot, that alternative history is shut down because ultimately the people that are the archaeologists have dedicated their whole lives to this stuff, have planted their stake, put their foot in the ground, wrote all their books, and they don't want to come off of their throne, because if they admit they were wrong or they missed this, or somebody like you stumbles across this stuff and didn't go to school for 20 years and got all these degrees and all this stuff, found it and they didn't, it makes them look stupid and they don't want to backpedal. So it's like they don't want to lose that position. And then others, like,
that's always there.
They know it's the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they know it's the truth, but they're afraid that if they bring this stuff out, they'll be ostracized and lose their positions if they're teachers or things like that.
So it's basically they're guarding their territory. They don't want anyone else in their territory. So they're going to come up with all the theories and all the ideas. That's one. The other thing is that some of these structures, if you try and date them using radiocarbon methods or something else, some other method, maybe inscriptions. If you go there and find some inscriptions, and if you date the structures, you might find that they're like, thousands of years older than the oldest structure in that particular region. So, for instance, this is a place which falls very broadly within the Indus Valley civilization, right? And Indus Valley civilization has been theorized to begin at around 3,500 BC odd. So it's like 5,000 years old. And if you go to the structure and you find out that it's 10,000 years old or maybe 20,000 years old, God knows, that completely topples the apple cart. It changes the whole version of history that has been given to us, which means that there were advanced civilizations in that region flourishing before the Indus Valley came along. Whereas, as per the traditional mainstream version, the Indus Valley was the beginning of the first big civilization in the Indian subcontinent. So that completely reverses the version of history that we are taught, and we could end up in a situation where actually civilization has gradually degraded, degenerated, and what you have in the Indus Valley is really a much more a degraded version, a much more, I would say, less technologically accomplished version than the civilizations that existed prior to that. So we're talking about a devolution of culture and civilization, not an evolution, which is what is fed to us by mainstream media. And by the way, I have written a book called The Yuga Shift, which came out a couple of years ago. It talks about the Yuga cycle, which basically is the cycle in which we move from a golden age to a dark age, which we call the Kali Yuga in India, and in Greece it was called the Iron Age, and then we move back gradually to the next golden age. So it's like a cycle where we devolve and we evolve, and that whole cycle duration is around 25,800 years, which is the precession cycle of the Earth. So the Earth's because of the Earth's position with respect to the fixed stars, it changes very gradually over 25,800 years, and this matches the duration of this particular cycle, which Indians call the Yuga cycle, the Greeks call the Great Year or the Platonic Year, the Hopi refer to the four worlds, and so on. So a lot of ancient cultures believe that civilization does not move in a linear pattern from cavemen to us. Rather, it moves up and down in cycles. And right now, we are not really at the pinnacle of civilization. We are actually at the bottom phase of the civilization, about to come out of the bottom, because they define civilization not in terms of purely technology, but also in terms of human values, in terms of consciousness, in terms of virtues. And from that standpoint, if you look at what has happened over the last 500 years or 1,000 years, we have actually devolved in terms of our virtue, in terms of our spirituality. And a lot of the abilities that we had in the past, that like telepathy, like clairvoyance, like having the ability to communicate with interdimensional beings. All of those capabilities we don't have now. Even our memories have declined so much. We can't remember a lot of details which our ancestors could remember. I mean, for instance, the Rig Vedas in India used to be memorized and passed on orally over generations. And today, we can't even remember phone numbers. So our memory capacity has also declined, in addition to our discrimination and virtues. So from that standpoint, we're actually at the bottom of the curve and about to go up, which explains this current explosion of explorations into alternate histories and or theories of consciousness, and also UFO contacts, and a lot of things which are not a part of the mainstream curriculum. As per my study, the Kali Yuga or the Iron Age ended this year in 2025, in 21st March of 2025. And we are now going into an ascending cycle of consciousness. But the first few years, first decade and a half is going to be very turbulent, because every time we end a cycle, there's a period of turbulence when the old order and the old civilizations, the old ideologies and structures, they kind of collapse and they're replaced by a new set of guiding principles. And so that's the period we're in right now, kind of turbulent period, a period of churn, and chaos, but also a period of enlightenment when new knowledge and new wisdom is going to come to us, and will basically develop a new way of looking at the world and the universe.
Yeah, and I definitely see that, and I'm a guy that likes looking at comparative mythology and comparative history, and seeing what rhymes, what lines up together, and when you see similar stories like that throughout the world, throughout culture, throughout just everywhere, there has to be something to that, and that's something I've talked about. And my personal beliefs, I'm a Christian, but I'm not one of these guys that thinks that all the truth is in our text. I think truth is everywhere. There's pieces that we have to gather and talk to each other and exchange these pieces. And one thing that's very common is, like you talked about, is these cycles. You find it, everywhere. The Maya talked about we're in the fifth world, and you talked about the Native Americans, your culture, in the Greeks, they talked about the Golden Age. Well, as far as a biblical view, you have Genesis 6. That was the golden age when gods walked amongst men. It says that the angels came down and bred with the daughters of men and made a hybrid race. Well, what happens? A great flood comes, and that's a reset. If you want to look at it as another cycle, that was a reset button. And it talks about in our text in Revelation, there will be judged by fire. But then after that, a new heaven and a new earth. So that's another cycle, another rebirth. So some people in my circles that are Christians, when we talk about other things like this, they kind of get uptight, and they kind of pull at their shirt collar, feel like they're suffocating a little bit. But I try to tell them, like, hey guys, this is exactly what our texts and stuff talk about too. It's just from a different lens in my perspective. But yes, everything is de-evolving, not evolving.
Yeah. And the other thing is that this particular transition, the Greeks call this particular transition that we are now going into as ekpyresis, which means cleansing by fire. And when I wrote my book and some of the articles that followed, I said that from 2025 onwards, you're likely to see an increase in fire events, an increase in wildfires, as well as an increase in floods, because fires and floods kind of go hand in hand together. And that is something that has already happened in 2025. I think a lot of countries have experienced their worst wildfire seasons in 2025, as well as some of the worst flooding have happened particularly in Asia, and the eastern part of the world has been plagued by floods and a lot of cloudburst events. Villages have been entirely washed away, whereas the western part of the world has experienced fires. So floods on the east and fires on the west, they have been a kind of a theme that have been running through 2025. And I don't think that's a coincidence. It clearly came out from the entire study of the cycle that I did in my book.
With the price of eggs and bread slowly approaching a day's wages, it's more important than ever than to secure the value of your dollar. One thing that has remained steady is gold and silver throughout the ages. Back in Roman times, a piece of gold would get you a toga. That's the equivalent of $3,000 today. That still remains true to this day. For a full suit, shoes, tie, you're looking at about $3,000, because gold and silver holds its value. So if you're tired of watching the value of your dollar go down every single day, it's time to get off your hands and make a move. I've recently teamed with Cornerstone Asset Metals. Reach out to those guys for all of your financial needs. It's time to trade in that forever devaluing dollar into hard assets that you can hold, like gold and silver. Be sure to check the link down in the description or the number on the screen. And hey, tell them Doc Brown sent you. Yeah. And far as like this subject we're talking about here, this Sphinx, how did you even come in contact with it? What was the first time that you seen this thing and kind of got you on this path?
Yeah, it was, I think, somebody I might have seen a image somewhere. It's just a single image that triggers you. And I might have seen an image somewhere on the internet. And then I was like, okay, I need to learn more about this. So then I kept on looking for more images, more videos, and more. I went through a lot of historical documents as well, because this part of this part of the world where the Sphinx is located, the ownership over this particular part kind of fluctuated between Persia or Iran and India. So sometimes this part was ruled over by Indians and sometimes by the Persians. And when uh, we used to have a lot of Chinese visitors to India. Chinese philosophers used to come to India during the Buddhist period, and they used to come here. They used to go across the country, look at all the temples and all the monasteries and stupas, and take back that knowledge to China. And what happened in India is that after the Islamic invasion, which started happening from the 10th century AD, all our libraries were destroyed. And a lot of this information about India itself was stored in China, but we had forgotten about it because it's not there anymore. The libraries are destroyed. You don't, the memories had declined. People don't remember so much anymore. And all of that information was lost. Then later, we got back that information from China by translating the texts that the Chinese philosophers had written. And it seems that this particular part of the world in Pakistan and India, that whole northern part of India, there were hundreds and thousands of temples. There were Buddhist stupas. There were monasteries, and a lot of them are gone now. They're not there anymore. Maybe destroyed by floods, and maybe by cataclysms, or maybe destroyed by invaders. We don't know that. But the fact that the Balochistan Sphinx stands there it's not an oddity. You expect a lot of temples and religious structures and palatial structures to be present at that in that part of the world, based on the writings of the Chinese philosophers who visited that part of the world. So we expect that out there.
Yeah, and that's something too that's I knew kind of where you was going when you talked about the the Islamic invasion and stuff, and it doesn't stop with them. It's pretty much all invaders, and that's so awful to people like me and my listeners and you that like looking through history and knowing these things and looking into this, because it's a repeatable pattern. You see terrorist organizations and stuff today, or even like as far back as like the Kuwait War and stuff. When they would invade a certain country, they would just deface all their temples and burn their books and just destroy, temples of their gods and statues and stuff. And it happened with you guys in India. It happened in South America when the conquistadors and the Roman Catholic Church went into South America and burned all their writings and destroyed their temples. It's just so much stuff is lost. And it's sad. So much things that we will never know.
Exactly. And that's what happens in this Kali Yuga, or the Iron Age, or the Dark Age. That's what happens in the Dark Age, is that all the knowledge is gradually lost. And now we're at a stage where we only have these little bits and pieces of knowledge scattered here and there, which is why it is all the more important that we reach out across cultures, across national boundaries, and try to put it all together, because that's the only way in which you can recover some of that knowledge or the wisdom that has been lost or distorted, because no specific culture has all the information anymore. It has been distorted or
Amen.
lost. And so you have to collaborate, you have to reach out, and you have to try and put it all together and see if it makes some kind of sense.
Yes, I agree 100%. That's something I say repeatedly on this show. It's like we need to talk to everybody, because everybody has pieces to the puzzle. And I even call these conversations that we're having right now is the exchanging of puzzle pieces. And this needs to happen to have a better 30,000 foot view of this thing that we call life, because we cannot be so pompous and arrogant that we think, we have all the answers. No, we have very little. We have more questions than answers, if we're to be honest. And this is the only way that we can try to even get a grasp on some of these subjects.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that on this site here do you want to point out and discuss?
I think there might be a few more images there, and there's a video out there as well. The video, I think I have a link to the video. Can you show the video on the screen?
Yeah, is it on this website?
Yeah, if you scroll down, I think I've posted a link to a specific. Yeah, see, look at that structure. Just go up, the one above that. Yeah, here you can see those. No. You just scroll down. Yeah, that one. Can I zoom in?
Oh, where'd it go?
Not down. Yeah, this one. Can you click on it and zoom in? Yeah, see, these are pillars. These are man-made pillars. Nature doesn't create these kind of pillars. And
yes. Oh, shoot. I tried to scroll into Zoom and it moved. There it is.
yeah, that one. I looked at this structure. This looks like the entrance to a palace, where you have these pillars. There was probably something on top, maybe a triangular or a flat structure, and you can see a part of the entrance as well. It's been covered up by mud, but there's a kind of an opening there, which could have been the doorway that led inside the structure. So when you look at this, how can somebody say that this is a geological structure? I mean, it makes no sense to me. And then if you go to the
Yes.
next one, the next image, yeah, this one, you have this flat, you have these vertical surfaces, straight vertical surfaces, and you have those flat horizontal surfaces. It looks like a building to me. If you remove all that pile and that garbage, you might find doorways and windows leading into the structure, but nobody's doing that.
Yeah.
And these are all
Especially
located.
like those columns.
And these are all located right next to the Sphinx. There is the same area. It's like a complex out there. And there you have that building out here on the left, and you can see an entrance which kind of goes inside that building.
Yeah. And it even looks like a window right here.
Yeah, that's a window, exactly. And then you can see the Sphinx as well. They're all lying in close proximity. And how come nobody's going there to investigate? Yeah,
Here
so
it is
this
on the map, right?
Yeah. This is the Indus Valley. That shaded area is the Indus Valley civilization, and the Sphinx is to the left, or near the coastline. Near the coastline. Yeah, somewhere out there.
Okay. Yeah, that's something too that a lot of sacred sites, temples, burial mounds, they're always close to waterways.
Yeah. So these are some of the images, and a picture speaks 1,000 words. You look at those images with an open mind, you know that they're man-made, but you don't find anybody willing to carry out a proper archaeological survey to find out and date that particular structure, to remove the sediment and restore it. There's nobody doing it, which tells me this is just a deliberate attempt at a cover-up. That's what it is. And so I
jokingly tell people it's a half joke. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I've kind of given up any hope of anybody actually going there and researching about it, because the authorities out there don't want anybody to find out more about this place.
Yeah, but I was about to say earlier, I kind of half-heartedly joke and tell people it's denial is more than a river in Egypt. And that's something a lot of people suffer from, is denial. And I'm guilty of it too, because I think some people are actually open to and want to learn new things and have truth and knowledge, but they get this complex of, how do I word it? Like, you are not worthy, or you are not smart enough, so therefore you have to rely on the quote unquote experts. So if the experts tell you this is bogus, don't even bother looking at it, then you just take their word for it. Oh, they're smarter than me, I don't even need to look into it.
Yeah.
But I've noticed on many subjects that I have listened to the experts, And once I went looking myself, I'm like, how can they say that this is not legit? You know, all my common sense, all my logic, my eyes looking at these structures that we were talking about today. It's like everything, all signs point to yes for me. And then once you get to digging, I found quite often that many times I have disagreed, and evidence that I have found have disagreed with the quote unquote experts. And for years, I relied on these experts and never even looked into some of these subjects. And once I did, I was like, man, for so many years, I thought this just because this person said that, and I didn't go look into it myself. And I missed out on a lot of knowledge I could have had years ago. And Lord knows how many more puzzle pieces I could have gathered and dots I could have connected if I'd have went looking years ago. So that's just, I really try to encourage people, even with us, don't even take what we're saying as gold. You know, if anything, say, hey, this is interesting and I want to look into it, and look into it for yourself. That's the only way you're ever going to come to a conclusion on anything, is if you do it yourself.
Experts are trying to protect the status quo. They're paid to protect the status quo. They are not paid to disrupt the standard narrative. So anything that goes against the standard narrative is ignored and filed away as an anomaly. And they try their best to do that. And this is true for this is particularly true for archaeology, because the archaeological dogma that we have devolved, that needs to be protected, as that we have evolved from cavemen to us. That particular dogma they try to protect at all costs. And so if my gut feel is that the structure is actually older than the Indus Valley civilization. If it was of the same age as the Indus Valley civilization, they would have probably gone there and said that, okay, look, the Indus Valley people, in addition to building their cities and stuff, they also built this place. That would have kind of fitted in with their narrative. But the reason that, or the very fact that they're not doing that, tells me that this is far older than the Indus Valley civilization, and they don't want to topple the apple cart. That's why they're ignoring it.
Yeah, and even like Göbekli Tepe, I use that as an example. I don't know if you're familiar with that site, but when they discovered that place, it was all over the news. They were so excited about it, man. They were digging, sending all kinds of people out there. And then once they started figuring out that it's much older than what they thought it was, and that I've even heard a lot of doctors and scholars say that Göbekli Tepe is the paradigm that busts the paradigm. It pushes our civilization way back. And now, but since they've already dug it and they were so public about it and everybody knows about it, they can't, pull out that Men in Black pen and wipe everybody's memory. So now what have they done? They've stopped. And they put this canopy over it, and now you can't excavate there anymore. Everything's shut down. It's just kind of a tourist attraction, and nobody's really talking about it or looking into it. And they say that we're trying to preserve future work for future archaeologists. And it's like they've only excavated, I think it's like 3% of that site. There's so many more complexes there, but they're just going to quit. I mean, name one thing in history we ever found that was, so amazing that we said, we're going to hit the pause button and save it for future.
Are you a hunter, a hiker, or just an outdoor enthusiast? Well, if you are, you know that good quality gear is hard to come by. And finding all-American made is like finding Bigfoot in the woods. Hence the name of Squatch Survival Gear. Head on over to squatchsurvivalgear.com. Use the code PLP10 for 10% off store-wide.
Yeah. And I remember when Robert Schoch had dated the Sphinx to maybe around 8,000. First he said around 7,500 BC, and then he dated it even further back to around 10,000 BCE because of the erosion that's there in the Sphinx enclosure. That time, the mainstream archaeologists and Zahi Hawass, they were all up in arms. They were saying it can't be that old. Civilization did not begin. There was no civilization 10,000 years ago. And now they have Göbekli Tepe, which was discovered quite by chance. I mean, they were not really looking for a civilization that's 9,600 years old. It happened by chance. And now that Göbekli Tepe is here, there's no logic for them to deny the antiquity of the Sphinx. So they're kind of in a tough spot now. And I think this is how slowly the old paradigm gets disrupted, it gets obliterated, and the new ideas begin to come in. And we're at that stage now where we don't go by that narrative of gradual evolution of civilization anymore. Rather, if Göbekli Tepe exists, it means structures as complex as Göbekli Tepe, or probably even more complex than Göbekli Tepe, could have existed at that time and prior to that. There's no way to deny that anymore.
Mm. And one thing too, I read that book by Schock, The Great Sphinx, and looked into a lot of Graham's work and his writings, and I thought it was fascinating how he tied in astro-archaeology and how these are basically like timestamps. And we even have that, which we don't anymore. They destroyed it, but in America at the Hoover Dam, they had this statue there of this like winged being and all this different stuff, but it was a timestamp that on the day they commemorated it, that the shadow of that being, angelic being, they had the shadow casted over this certain thing. And so it done that every year, that shadow casted over this certain area. And it was like a timestamp saying that, this was finished and commemorated on this date. And the ancients did it too. And that Sphinx, they had figured out that it pointed to the rising sun when it was in the constellation of Leo. And so they dated that back to around 10 to 12,000 years ago, the time of the young Adrias cataclysm, the reset, basically. And they were commemorating that time. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if you've looked into, or maybe look into it in the future, this Sphinx, where is it pointing? Is it pointing to a certain constellation, and maybe can tie that to an age and kind of timestamp it that way, like they did the Sphinx of Egypt?
Yeah, I mean, this one is actually facing towards the Sphinx of Egypt. So it's facing west. And the Sphinx of Egypt is facing east. So it's kind of like they are long lost lovers looking at each other across the ocean, across the land masses. But obviously, since we can't go there, we can't do any further studies, either archaeoastronomy or any kind of inscriptions. We can't do that unless somebody actually gets the permission to go there and do that study. You can't do that from the pictures.
Yeah. Maybe you keep being loud about it, man, and keep going on some shows and stuff. And I'm sure, like me, I listen to a lot of shows, have a lot of friends that have shows, and usually how this works is once you go on one person's show, the other friends that watch reach out to you, and hopefully, man, we can get you, if you're willing, on a circuit and just spread awareness on this, and maybe spark some curiosity, somebody that's in that region to get some boots on the ground. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I hope it happens. I've been hoping for quite some time that something will happen, and which is why I published this article on Graham Hancock's website, because that's a website that a lot of people go to. I was hoping maybe even Graham might get a chance to go to, he travels a lot, and he might get a chance to go to Pakistan and look at it, but it hasn't happened till now. So fingers crossed, let's hope something happens in future.
Yeah. And you talked about your book. Now, is this the latest book that you've written on the Yuga cycles?
That's my first book and my latest book. It came out in December of 2023. So it's been around a year and a half now. And I've got some very good reviews on Amazon. So if you want, you can go to Amazon, type Yuga Shift, look at the reviews. There's some few pages which you can read on the Kindle version for free. And if you like it, you can take a read.
Yeah, that's something I definitely would like to dive deeper into, because I've just kind of got my feet wet. I actually had another scholar on. It was from your neck of the woods, and we kind of dived into some of the mythology, like the creation accounts and some of the Hindu gods and stuff. And that's one area that I've not really like deep dived into, but I've been wanting to for a long time, because there's just from what I know, the 30,000 foot view, it seems so interesting, because you have the gods walking with men, and so many accounts and stories that sound so similar to the others, in the world, and the Vimanas and the cosmic wars and things like that. I mean, that's something that I would love to take the time to kind of dive into.
Yeah, I mean, I cover some of that in the book. I talk about the really, mind-boggling stuff across cultures in terms of, the kind of the whole gods and sages, the 7 sages who moved across the world, the gods who interacted with us in the past, and a lot of the scientific findings in recent times, which shows that even during the Ice Age, during the around 20,000 to 30,000 years ago, we were doing surgery. There's evidence of bone surgery, an amputation carried out quite perfectly around 30,000 years ago. Then we have this evidence of the cranial surgeries, the trephination surgeries, where we make a hole in the skull to relieve any kind of pain from an injury. That has been going on for around 8,000 years. They were making flutes using bone flutes, dating to around 40,000 BC. And God knows how many types of instruments they would have made with wood, because wood doesn't survive so long. So a lot of those artifacts would have been destroyed and perished away. But the ones that they made with bone or something that is more hardy, that has survived till now. So you have a lot of this evidence of sailing. There's evidence of agriculture. So art, you have those beautiful cave arts in Lascaux and other areas of the world. All of that shows that our Ice Age ancestors were not really as primitive as they have been made out to be. They had everything that they needed to lead happy, fulfilled, harmonious lives. And they had also many of the technologies that we have today. So this whole idea of a primitive caveman is no longer valid. And that ties in with the whole cyclical framework that all the Asians talk about.
Yeah. And that's something too. You'd mentioned 2025. That's another thing that you see echoing through so many stories and cultures and people. I think it was Madame Blavatsky and Alice Bailey. They're part of that Theosophist movement, and they wrote that book. What was it? Externalization of the Hierarchy.
Yeah.
And said that these, extra celestial beings, these, godly type beings that were the watchers of Earth, were going to expose themselves, in 2025 to the world. And
after 2025,
trying to think. Yeah. And I'm trying to think. I had a girl on, Chastity, and we talked about 2025, the beginning of the end, and she talked about all the different correlations. They're slipping my mind, but there was some other pair of gentlemen that wrote a book, and they were looking at histories and repeating cycles, and they even said that 2025 was going to be a significant event. And now we have this 3-eyed atlas, this big celestial object heading our way. And NASA found this huge rock a few years ago. I think it was 2012, called Apophis, that they said was heading our way. So 2025 is going to be popping, as the kids say nowadays.
Yeah, I wrote about Alice Bailey in my book, and there's an article on my website about the prediction that she made about 2025 and how that correlates to the calendar in the Kala Chakra Tantra, which is the sacred calendar used by the Tibetan Buddhists. And that 2025 date also comes to us from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. So there's a matchup there as well. A lot of data pointing to 2025. And then there's another interesting thing about Edgar Casey. He said that the arrival of the Messiah will happen in 36. Now, a lot of people assume that when Casey said 36, he meant 1936, which doesn't make any sense, because he made those predictions in 1932. And you wouldn't be talking about the arrival of the Messiah 4 years later, when in fact he had gone on to make a lot of predictions about the Second World War, which happened later. If the Messiah comes in 1936, there's no question of a Second World War happening after that. So what I have argued is that 36 refers to 2036. That is the 36th year of the next century, which again fits into this overall idea of a transitional period that we are now going through. And we might see some really big events in the next decade, in the 30s.
Yeah, I agree. I know a lot of my listeners would agree with you too. Well, brother, man, I really appreciate you coming on and especially getting back with me so soon like you did and agreeing to come on and talk about this and some of your findings and hopefully expose some of this stuff to new people and get them to digging into some of these things. But I just wanted to thank you for coming on and sharing that with us and taking your time to research. You know, I'm a researcher. I've been doing it for a few years now. I wrote a book too, and I know the research and the labor, it has to be a labor of love. But by doing this, you're giving people bridges to this really hard to get information. So from one to another, I appreciate you.
Thanks, Justin, for having me. And it's been a pleasure discussing about the Sphinx and the overall idea of the cycles. And I hope your listeners enjoy listening to this discussion. Thanks.
No, I'm sure. And I'd love to have you back sometime if you're willing. We can deep dive on some other things that you're researched on and want to dive into. But before we go, if anybody is fascinated on some of these topics that we touched on, I know you cover them more in depth. Do you want to let everybody know where they can find your website, your content, if you have a YouTube channel or books, anything you'd like to plug to the listeners?
Yeah, the website is right there on the screen. It's www.bib. My name is Bibhu Dev Mishra, BIBHUDEVMISRA.com. Or you can go to Google and type Ancient Inquiries. That's the name of my website. So that'll give you the website as well. There you're going to find all the articles that I have written till now, as well as the link to the book. And if you're interested in the book, you can go to Amazon and type Yuga Shift. So that'll give you the book. I don't have a YouTube channel, so neither do I have a Twitter. But you can, send me a friend request on Facebook if you want.
That's how I found him, guys. Hey, guys, hope you enjoyed that. And if you did, be sure to check out his stuff. You know, the website's been on some of these screenshots and videos I've been putting up here, and I'll try to get those in the links for you, too, to make it easy. But be sure and check him out, and hope you enjoyed it, guys. Hey, until next time, torch is high, guys.